The garage fell silent. Not the normal kind of silence that happens when the tools stop for lunch. This was different. The kind of silence that makes people stop breathing for a second. 30 mechanics stood frozen inside the massive service center as Billionaire CEO Victoria Lang pointed toward the exit. And standing in front of her was Michael Carter, a single father who had worked there for nearly 12 years. His toolbox sat beside him. His hands were still stained with grease from the truck he'd been repairing only minutes earlier. Victoria's voice echoed through the building. "You're done here, Michael." Effective immediately. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then something happened that Victoria never expected. One mechanic removed his work gloves. Then another. Then another. Within seconds, every mechanic in the building was standing beside Michael. And one by one, they started walking toward the door. Not because they hated their jobs. Not because they wanted to cause trouble. But because sometimes loyalty means standing beside the person who always stood beside everyone else. And on that day, they were about to teach a billionaire a lesson money could never buy. For most people in Cedar Falls, Iowa, Michael Carter was simply known as Mike. He was 39 years old. He drove an aging blue pickup truck that rattled every time it started. He lived in a modest two-bedroom house with his 10-year-old daughter, Emma. And despite carrying more responsibilities than most people ever saw, Mike was known for one thing above all else. Kindness. Not dramatic kindness. Not the kind that gets posted online. The quiet kind. The kind that shows up when nobody is watching. Every morning before work, Mike packed Emma's lunch. Every evening he helped her with homework. Every weekend he volunteered at community repair events where families who couldn't afford vehicle maintenance could get basic help. If someone's battery died in a parking lot, Mike helped. If an elderly neighbor needed a broken fence repaired, Mike showed up. If a young mechanic made a mistake at work, Mike stayed late to teach them. Never judging. Never complaining. Just helping. His co-workers respected him because he treated everyone with dignity. The newest apprentice received the same respect as the most experienced technician. And that wasn't common. Especially in a busy repair center where tempers often ran high. But Mike believed something his late father had taught him years ago. People remember how you make them feel long after they forget what you said. It became the principle that guided his life. Especially after tragedy changed everything. 5 years earlier, Mike's wife Sarah had passed away unexpectedly. Overnight, he became a single father. The grief nearly broke him. There were mornings he sat in his truck before work trying to gather enough strength to walk inside. There were nights he cried after Emma fell asleep. But somehow, he kept moving forward. For her. Always for her. The company Mike worked for was called Apex Fleet Services. Over the years it had grown into one of the largest commercial vehicle maintenance companies in the Midwest. The owner was Victoria Lang. A business magazine favorite. A billionaire entrepreneur. Known for aggressive growth and ruthless efficiency. Investors loved her. Employees feared her. Most workers never met her in person. She operated from corporate headquarters in Chicago and rarely visited local branches. So when rumors spread that Victoria was coming to Cedar Falls, everyone became nervous. Managers cleaned offices. Supervisors reviewed performance reports. Employees tried to look extra productive. Nobody wanted to make a bad impression. Especially because Apex had recently launched a company-wide efficiency initiative. A fancy phrase that often meant budget cuts. The day Victoria arrived, the atmosphere changed immediately. She walked through the service center wearing an expensive business suit that looked completely out of place among engine parts and hydraulic lifts. A group of executives followed closely behind her. Taking notes. Nodding constantly. Trying to impress her. Victoria inspected everything. The equipment. The inventory. The employee schedules. Nothing escaped her attention. At first, things seemed fine. Until she noticed something in a report. Her expression hardened. She turned toward the branch manager. Why are service times in Bay 4 consistently longer than company average? The manager glanced nervously at the paperwork. That's Michael Carter's station. Victoria looked directly at Mike. Why are your repair times slower? Mike wiped his hands on a rag. Because I double-check safety inspections before vehicles leave. Victoria frowned. The data says you're costing the company productivity. Mike remained calm. I've also had the lowest callback rate in the region. Several mechanics nodded. They knew it was true. Customers trusted Mike because he fixed problems correctly the first time. But Victoria wasn't interested. She was focused on numbers. Spreadsheets. Efficiency charts. Metrics. Not people. The conversation escalated quickly. Victoria questioned Mike's methods. Mike respectfully defended them. Neither backed down. Then one executive whispered something into Victoria's ear. She looked annoyed. Almost embarrassed. As though Mike's disagreement challenged her authority. And then she made a decision. A terrible one. Michael Carter, she said loudly, if you're unwilling to follow company expectations, you're terminated. The entire garage froze. Mike blinked. Not because he was angry. Because he was shocked. 12 years. Gone in a sentence. His first thought wasn't about himself. It was Emma. School supplies. Mortgage payments. Groceries. Everything depended on this job. For a moment, his heart sank. But he refused to argue. Refused to create a scene. He simply nodded. Picked up his toolbox. And started walking toward the exit. Then he heard a voice. Hold on, Mike. It came from Carlos Ramirez, a mechanic who had worked beside him for 7 years. Carlos removed his gloves. If Mike goes, I go. Another mechanic stepped forward. Then another. And another. Soon every mechanic in the building stood together. Victoria stared in disbelief. What are you doing? An older technician named Harold answered. Standing up for someone who has spent years standing up for everyone else. Silence. Then 30 mechanics walked out. Together. The story spread through Cedar Falls faster than anyone imagined. Customers began calling. Wondering why repairs were delayed. Community members shared stories about Mike. The single dad who fixed vehicles for struggling families. The man who never charged neighbors for simple repairs. The mentor who helped young workers build careers. People realized something important. The mechanics hadn't walked out because of a firing. They walked out because kindness had built loyalty stronger than any employment contract. Meanwhile, Mike sat at home that evening trying to explain the situation to Emma. She listened quietly. Then asked a simple question. Dad, are you okay? Mike smiled. The kind of smile parents use when they don't want their children to worry. I'll figure it out. Emma thought for a moment. Then wrapped her arms around him. Everybody likes you because you're nice. Mike laughed softly. I don't know about everybody. Almost everybody. For the first time all day, he felt hope. The next morning something unexpected happened. Several local business owners contacted Mike. Offering support. A community college offered temporary teaching opportunities for automotive students. A transportation company offered consulting work. Former customers called just to encourage him. But the biggest surprise came 3 days later. The mechanics who had walked out showed up at Mike's house. Not for a meeting. Not to complain. To present an idea. Carlos spoke first. "We've been talking." Mike looked confused. "About what?" Harold grinned. "Opening our own shop." Mike nearly laughed. "You can't be serious." "We are." The group had pooled savings. Found an available building. Created a plan. Not because they wanted revenge. Because they wanted to build a workplace based on respect. One where people mattered as much as profits. The project wasn't easy. The building needed repairs. Equipment was expensive. Customers were uncertain at first. But something remarkable happened. The community rallied around them. People volunteered. Local businesses donated materials. Customers spread the word. And little by little, Carter and Crew Auto Service came to life. The name embarrassed Mike. The team insisted. "It belongs there," Carlos said. "You earned it." Months passed. The shop grew. Not because of marketing. Because of reputation. Customers trusted people who cared. And kindness became part of the business model. Young mechanics received mentorship. Single parents got flexible schedules. Employees facing hardships received support instead of punishment. People actually wanted to work there. Meanwhile, Apex Fleet Services faced challenges. Losing an entire team had consequences. Productivity dropped. Customer satisfaction declined. Employee turnover increased. Eventually, Victoria began hearing the same message repeatedly. The problem wasn't Michael Carter. The problem was leadership. For the first time in years, she started listening. Really listening. Not to reports. To people. And what she heard wasn't comfortable. Employees didn't want perfection. They wanted respect. They wanted leaders who understood that businesses run on human relationships, not just numbers. Nearly a year later, Victoria drove to Cedar Falls alone. No executives. No assistants. No photographers. She walked into Carter and Crew Auto Service. The shop was busy. Employees were laughing. Customers seemed relaxed. The atmosphere felt different. Healthier. Mike looked up from a repair order. Surprised. Victoria took a deep breath. "I owe you an apology." The room became quiet. She admitted she had been wrong. Not about efficiency. About people. She had forgotten that leadership wasn't about power. It was about trust. And trust couldn't be demanded. It had to be earned. Mike listened carefully. Then smiled. Not because he won. Not because she lost. Because forgiveness mattered more than either. "We all make mistakes," he said. "What matters is what we learn from them." Victoria nodded. For the first time in a long time, she looked less like a billionaire CEO and more like a human being trying to grow. Years later, people still talked about the day every mechanic walked out. But not because it was dramatic. Because it revealed something powerful. Kindness isn't weakness. Respect isn't optional. And the way we treat people creates ripples we may never fully see. Michael Carter never set out to become a leader. He simply chose kindness every day. One coworker at a time. One customer at a time. One small act at a time. And when life tested him, those acts came back in ways he never expected. Because genuine kindness creates something money cannot buy. Loyalty. Trust. Community. And hope. So if there's a lesson in this story, it's this. The strongest influence you'll ever have isn't your title, your income, or your position. It's how you treat people when you have the chance. Because someday, when life becomes difficult, the kindness you've given away may be the very thing that carries you forward. And sometimes, one person choosing compassion can inspire an entire community to stand together. The way they stood beside Michael Carter.